Welcome to She's Got This, the podcast for ambitious women who want to grow and scale their business and use the power of intentional energy direction to design their very best life. I'm your host, Christine Gallagher, award-winning business coach and mindset mentor to female entrepreneurs. If you're ready to own your brilliance while making bank, step into the absolute best version of you, and become a force for positive change in the world, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to She's Got This. This is Christine Gallagher. And today we are talking about techniques for living as if what you want has already happened. This is also known as living in the end or living in the state of the wish fulfilled. So if you were to study any new thought leader, manifestation teacher, spiritual guru, etc., you will see that they're basically all coming to the same conclusion for how to actually create your reality. They're just saying it in different ways or applying various techniques. But the problem is most of the time you're getting the what, but not the how. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. Now, it's important to remember that when we talk about creating your own reality or manifestation, it's not like a magic bullet, quick fix overnight thing. What I want you to think about it as is a natural process of life really unfolding for you in line with who you identify as being. And that part is really, really important. It's less about repeating affirmations, or maybe you're visualizing, or maybe you're writing your affirmations and having techniques like that you're doing. Nothing wrong with any of those things. And I'm actually going to address some of those today. But the more important thing to remember as we jump into this is, again, it's about feeling being, and becoming the person who would have what you want, becoming that person already. So techniques are used simply for one thing, and that's to get used to the end feeling state. So a technique is really just a means to get you to that feeling of assuming the wish fulfilled or living in the end, as we said. And the other great thing about this, when you're using techniques, is it also guarantees that you are dedicating time and attention solely to creating the state of the wish fulfilled and not multitasking, right? So mentally or physically, that means you're actually taking time to do this and you're dedicating time and effort to it. Now, the purpose of everything that we do regarding techniques, it's simply to catch the feeling. And once you've captured the feeling and you know how to make yourself feel it and assume it on command, really, that's actually it. And I want to talk about this using a little anecdote that I have read many times. When Neville Goddard was in New York City way, way back, he was working with a spiritual teacher. His name was Abdullah. And Abdullah was teaching him all the cool things about metaphysics and manifestation and creating what you want and all of that good stuff. And one day, Neville came to him, knocked on the door, because Neville wanted to travel to Barbados for the holidays. And this was way back, probably either before planes or when there weren't too many domestic flights, international flights happening. And so he needed to get to Barbados, which is where his family lived and where he was from, by a certain time, and nothing was happening. He was trying to visualize, trying to do techniques that he had learned from Abdullah. And so he kind of got to a point where he was like, what's going on? He went to Abdullah's place and he knocked on the door. And when Abdullah opened the door, Neville said exactly what I just mentioned. He's been trying to get to Barbados and nothing has really happened to get him there. So what Abdullah did when he heard Neville say this is really something simple. He just said to him, "You are in Barbados," and then he slammed the door. So what that is illustrating is that if you want to get to the thing, the place, or whatever it may be that you want, you have to already believe that you are there. And so that's where techniques come in, because they are helping you to reach that state. And I find that a lot of times when we hear about manifestation, we don't hear about these specific hows. But if you think about it, if you're conscious of being or possessing something, then you can't also be in a state of desiring it. And it's interesting because sometimes we're able to create our own reality, create what we want without using any techniques. Now, why would that happen? Because to us, those things are within the realms of naturalness in most cases. For us to assume it feels natural, we have much less resistance, sometimes no resistance. So remembering that our goals are inevitable, you can't think of it as something that is going to happen. And that's the hard part. That's the tricky part, which is why we're talking about this today. But you want to drop that thinking in terms of it's going to happen. And instead, we're focusing on the feeling of actually having it. Now, generally, if you keep your thoughts on a good mental diet, you're monitoring your inner conversations, you're doing things like practicing mindfulness or meditation, what happens is that achieving the desired state becomes easier. So I don't want that to be mistaken as, you can't manifest without doing a big, long list of mental activities, but rather it should be understood as in order to more consistently control what you manifest, you should develop some mental disciplines. So let's talk about these specific techniques. And as I go through them, you can think about some of the things that you are looking to create in your life right now and which of these techniques resonates with you the most. And actually, you don't need to do all of these techniques. I would start with like one or two, see how it goes, and don't pressure yourself to use a million techniques. These are just ideas for you because everyone is kind of different as far as what they like to do. Now, the very first technique is called SATS, S-A-T-S, which stands for the state akin to sleep. And that is a way to invoke the feeling of already having what you want. Now, one of my earlier podcasts this year was specifically dedicated to talking about SATS in the whole episode. So if you're interested in getting a deeper dive, you can go check that out. But the thing is that unless you have developed the concentration and belief to instantly, easily shift states while you're interacting with like your present life or the 3D with no problems, what I have found is that SATS is the most robust way to do that. And so the steps to doing that are pretty simple. Number one, you choose a scene, and that would be any scene that would come after the realization of your desire. So it's helpful if you can add sensory vividness to your chosen scene and think about it in terms of what are my goals? And for each of them, what scene would imply the feeling of the wish fulfilled? The second step is about creating that drowsy, sleepy state, which is why they call it the state akin to sleep. You're not asleep yet, but it's sort of that meditative, daydreamy type feeling before you fade into sleep. So it's a state where you feel completely relaxed, and you can do this whether you're laying down or in a chair, it doesn't matter. But what you want to do is you want to begin repeating the scene that you've chosen in your sleepy state. And the idea is to keep repeating the scene until it seems real to you. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you can see it as you see things like in the waking world, but it's instead so real that you have basically forgotten that you are imagining. And a lot of people say they have trouble reaching this state. And usually when I look at what they're doing, it's that they're simply not repeating the scene long enough. So you want to go back to the start of the scene if you become distracted and keep repeating it. And this gets easier with practice. That's certainly what happened for me. And when you loop your scene, know that it's not being done in order to actually get something. The point is you are there to feel the feeling of already being or having what you desire. And if you do it enough times, you will get to the point where you genuinely feel the thrill of the thing as if it were happening physically until you feel it to be real. Okay, the fourth step is to feel as if you have already accomplished it. So Neville Goddard, for example, he talks a lot about feeling as both an emotion and also the feeling of accomplishment. And so the best way to reach that feeling is an inner knowing that it is done. So sort of a knowing or feeling of accomplishment. Now, happy emotions should follow if you have done this correctly, but you don't have to necessarily have a super strong emotional reaction necessarily, although sometimes I like to do that. But when you snap out of it later, you should feel a brief, slight moment of, wait, did that not happen already? And then you want to either fall asleep while you're repeating that scene or wake up from your drowsy state once you have the feeling of knowing that it is done. And so that's something that you can do any time of day. It doesn't have to be before sleep. It's really any time that you can sit down or relax or lay down and just get into that drowsy state. So it's about repeating the technique until you have an inner conviction that your desire is actually already yours. So for example, you can detach from the quote, real world, unquote, where you are not wealthy, because you know that it doesn't matter what you see with your eyes and hear with your ears. It's about basking in the feeling of wealth and doing nothing else. And you don't even necessarily have to think about it as manifesting. You're not manifesting, you are wealthy now. So remember that your 3D, or what you're seeing around you, it doesn't matter, and circumstances don't matter either. Now, the problem is after somebody does something like SATs, they will wait really expectantly for what it is they want to arrive. And you wait and you wait and you wait, and then it doesn't come. So why does that happen? Well, it happens because you have assumed the feeling of waiting for something to come instead of assuming the feeling of already having it. Now, I definitely realize this part is a little tricky. It's best to just not give it much thought when you're not doing SATs. And if it does cross your mind, try to think back to your SAT session and how much joy that you were able to feel when you felt like you already had the thing. So try to think of that scene as a memory that actually occurred, not as some sort of magical event that's supposed to conjure something up later, right? So when you think of a happy memory, usually you'll smile and you'll feel that bit of joy that you felt before. And that is what living in the end is about. Okay, so now that we've talked about the method that personally I use a lot, and it's one of my favorites, SATs, I want to teach you some other techniques that you can use to mix it up, or, if you don't resonate with SATs itself. One of the methods that I use is called scripting. Now, what this is actually writing out the story of you getting the thing that you want, or being the person you want to be, actually writing it out as if it has already happened. Now, I can recommend a really good book for this. This is Royce Kristen. He wrote a book called Scripting the Life You Want, and you can get that book on Amazon. And that is the one that I used when I first learned about this. And he really goes into not only the how of scripting, but he also talks about, from a manifestation standpoint or an energy standpoint, how it actually works and why it works. So I recommend that. The second thing that you could do is affirmations. Now, a lot of times people will poo-poo affirmations because they will say, well, it doesn't feel like I really mean it. I can't get myself into a place of believing. And that's okay. It may be the affirmations aren't for you. But again, it might be something to try as one of your potential techniques. And the best way to think about affirmations is to write out your fears first and then reverse them. So if you have a fear of something, you want to think about what is the opposite of that. And it's also really powerful when you start your affirmations with the words I am, because you're saying I am this thing, right? So I am wealthy and sought after. I am desirable and beautiful, whatever it may be. And you can do this any way you want. My particular method is I usually take a sheet of paper or a notebook and I write out 3 affirmations for that day, and I write them each multiple times. So for example, I'll say the first one 3 times and write it out, the second one 3 times, the third one 3 times, and continue writing it out until I'm at the bottom of the paper. Another thing that you can think about in terms of creating what you want and using a technique that has been around for a long time is something called subliminals. Now, again, this could be a whole episode, but what you can do is you can go to YouTube and you can type in subliminals, or subliminals for sleep, or subliminals for manifesting. And there's lots of different tracks out there that you can do. But essentially what you're doing is you're listening to something while you're sleeping, repeating itself. And the idea is that it's still impressing your subconscious while you are sleeping. So that's another thing that you can look at doing. And one of the ways that I use this is I use an app called Parrot. It's a free app, and it allows you to record things in your own voice and then loop it so it repeats. So for example, I take a list of some of my favorite affirmations and I record them on Parrot, and then it automatically loops them over and over. And I listen to that while I'm sleeping. Now, there's also a passive technique that I want to share. And most of you know what this is because it's just about having gratitude. So the idea is if you can dwell in a state of gratitude, then you will be constantly manifesting further states of gratitude. which means you will be creating circumstances that cause you to feel more gratitude. And I believe this is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. And you can think of this as being an integral part of having a good mental diet, right? Really watching your thoughts and making sure that you're expressing that gratitude and thankfulness right now, even if the thing hasn't happened. And also expressing gratitude for what you already have in your life. One of the things I've heard somebody say in the past is, if you're not grateful for what you have now, why should you be given any more? So it's something to think about in terms of making that a habit. Now, the way that I incorporate this and have incorporated it in the past is to keep a notebook that is completely separate and use it as a gratitude journal. There's lots of ways to do it, but one of my favorite ways is to simply write down 3 things that happened that day at the end of the day or at night before you go to bed that you're grateful for. And then I go and I review them the next morning. Another technique is something called revision. And I want to explain the steps of this because it's really fascinating. So when you're looking to revise something, what you do first is you review an event that, let's say, didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. And this isn't about judging it, right? It's just about reviewing it. And then in your imagination or in a journal, if you prefer, you rewrite and revise the event the way you wish it would have gone. And then you get into that state akin to sleep. And just know that's not necessarily required, because I have had revisions work without actually getting into SATs, but only by rewriting them in my journal. So then what you do is you relive the revised event in your imagination over and over again until the image state begins to take on sort of the tones of reality. So that means until it starts feeling as though it may have already actually happened the way that you would have preferred. And then if you're using the SATs piece of this, you can either fall asleep while repeating the scene or wake up from the drowsy state once you know that it's done. One of the things that Neville teaches is that he advises us at the end of the day to revise the day the way we wish it would have gone, and then relive the day in our imagination in accordance with our desires until it actually feels real. So that's if you want to take this to the next level. Now, through this revision technique, you can revise any unwanted event, and you will find that in the coming days and weeks, things will actually start to change for the better in accordance with your revision. Another technique is called the I remember when technique. And you can use this to move into a new state. So this would mean you're imagining from your wish fulfilled, remembering the state that you have actually moved out of. So an example would be, I remember when I had that old beat up Toyota, and now I have this brand new beautiful car. That would be an example of using the I remember when technique. So again, you're imagining from the place where you already have what you desire and remembering the state that you were in previously when you didn't have the thing that you desire. Another technique is the congratulations technique. And this is a congratulatory scene from another to you or you to another. And basically it implies that the wish is fulfilled. So if we use the car example again, it might be you imagining that somebody is giving you a big hug and saying, congratulations on your new car. So you're actually imagining it as if it has already happened, which of course, somebody congratulating you implies that. Another technique for getting into that state of the wish fulfilled is referred to as eavesdropping. So basically, this is where you imagine overhearing 2 or more people discussing that you have your wish fulfilled. So for example, look how amazing she looks, right? So basically you're eavesdropping on some people who are saying something that implies that you have your wish fulfilled. Another technique is called there, here, then, now. So essentially what you're doing with this is you are making there, here. So let's say you are in X location and you are imagining that you are in Y location instead. So from Y, you would think of X. So you're making then now by experiencing now as you wish it were. And then there is the isn't it wonderful / thank you technique. And what this is when a desire comes upon you, you quickly follow up that desire with saying, isn't it wonderful? Or thank you so much. Basically a phrase that implies your wish is fulfilled. Something else that you can do that is really powerful and effective, especially when you do this consistently, is the I am mantra. So what this is you repeating I am to yourself before falling asleep. And I have repeated the I am phrase for only a few minutes at most, and I have gotten full body chills starting in my legs and moving up to my chest. And so you don't have to say I am X, although you could. Even just saying I am is really powerful because you're basically saying I am this thing or this person, or I'm in this situation that is my desired result. Another technique is referred to as the first principle. So what this means is you are saying to yourself, be still and know that I am God. And you can use this throughout the day when you get stressed or confused or tired, or you need a break, or you're angry. You go back to knowing that you are God. And what this means to me is that we essentially are God because we can create something in our imagination and have it come to fruition. That's how powerful our imagination is. So we actually have that power inside us already. And by reminding yourself of that, you put yourself in that place. Be still and know that I am God, or you are the creator. Same idea. Another one is the how did I ... technique. So for example, how did I become so successful at achieving my wish fulfilled effortlessly and easily? Because when you ask how in the past tense, that is thinking from the end. And so what you're doing is you're eliciting the experience, not actually seeking an answer. Another couple of fun ones I'll mention that I have used successfully before is I have X, so what? So what this is when you're thinking about the thing you want or who you want to be, basically the reality you want to live in, you ask yourself, I have $10,000 months every month, so what? Meaning that it feels like it's just natural, it's normal, it's no big deal, which essentially is conditioning your brain to feel as if it already is here. Another one that's a little bit of a twist on that is using the word obviously. So you might journal or say to yourself, I have $10,000 months consistently in my business, obviously, right? It's another way to tell your brain that you are actually experiencing the thing that it is you want. So no matter what techniques you play with, it really is a matter of faith and persistence in the end. You have to desire the thing you want, whatever that is, enough to almost die completely to the lack of having it. And don't be afraid of your reactions if you do this and you start thinking, oh, this doesn't feel real. This feels like I'm being fake. First of all, when you practice these more and more and you decide which techniques resonate with you, this will feel much more natural over time. But don't be afraid of what your reactions are that come up at first, because really that's something that is just telling you about yourself and your state. And the worst case scenario is that nothing actually changes. But if you do these techniques, things will definitely start changing. So I mix up my routine as far as which techniques I use for living in the end. For example, right now I'm doing a lot of scripting. I'm doing the affirmations and putting them on the Parrot app and listening to them when I'm sleeping. I do some short meditations and I do a gratitude list. And then at the end of the night, I do my state akin to sleep before I drift off into slumberland. And what I do the rest of the time is to just make sure I'm aware of what my thoughts are. Again, it will seem challenging at first and you will think, I can't do this, but I really encourage you so much to persist at this and be aware of what's going on in your mind and your mental diet and the type of inner conversations you're having with yourself. And also making sure that your self-concept is high. So if you're somebody like me who had different things happen in the past or childhood or different experiences, you might have a not so great self-concept. This is common with people, right? They have low self-esteem, they don't have a great self-image. And if that is you, you can change that by changing the concept of yourself. And doing a lot of the techniques that we just talked about can help you move into that place where you are actually having your self-concept be really strong and really positive, because that puts you more in the state of being the person who already has what you want. So those are just a handful of techniques that I like to use and that some of my clients have used really successfully. But no matter what you do, you have to be aware of one thing. Beware of endless information consuming. So for example, with me, I love to research. I love to go down rabbit holes. I like to read about different techniques, and I would be continuing to just read and absorb information and not actually putting these things into practice. So you want to be careful of that. And it's really about being a doer of the information you're learning, not just a hearer of the information. Because when you're a doer, you are actually doing activities intentionally to create what it is that you want, not just reading them or reading about others' experiences. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or share it with someone else who would find it helpful. To stay connected with me, please visit shesgotclients.com and sign up for my email list at the bottom of the page. Or feel free to share this episode on your Instagram and tag me at Christine G, and I'll repost you. I would love to share this with as many people as possible. I love you. Until next time, keep shining your light.